It wouldn't be entirely accurate to say I come from a family of gamers. In fact, my family as a whole was kind of unorthodox. My father died when I was very young, and I don't have any brothers or sisters. What I have instead is a whole heap of half-brothers and half-sisters, all of whom are at least 2 decades older than me. So, growing up, I didn't have anyone in my household around the same age as me to share my passion for gaming. But that doesn't mean that computer games weren't sometimes a family affair. In fact, some of my earliest gaming experiences consisted of me, my mother, and one of my half-sisters sitting around my new PC trying to figure out how to get through King's Quest IV or Space Quest III, or probably our favourite game of the era, Zack McCracken and the Alien Mindbenders. And that's probably a damn good thing. Without them, I strongly suspect I would have been too young to really understand those games, and too impatient to make any progress at all. A few years later, I finally got my first console, a Sega Master System. No one in my family really took much of an interest in console gaming, so for a while the Master System was solely my domain. But then I got Lemmings, a game that seemed like a black hole of addiction, ready and eager to suck in anybody who got too close. My mother succumbed, then my half-sister, then my half-brother. Suddenly, I wasn't the only one who wanted access to the Master System. Having grown up without siblings around my own age, I wasn't particularly acquainted with the notion of sharing, and now I discovered I wasn't very fond of the concept. I came to resent those intrusions into my gaming world. I complained that they were wearing out my controllers and damaging my Master System. This at least was true. The Master System, annoyingly, instead of having a pause button on the controllers, put it on the console itself. And since Lemmings is a game that occasionally requires split-second timing, pausing can be a vital aid to success. On one occasion, my half-brother, in his desperation, reached down to the console and smashed the pause button a little too hard. It didn't work after that, which made the game a damn sight harder. A couple of years later I got a Mega Drive, and fortunately its controllers do have a pause button. By then everyone's Lemmings addiction had cooled off, but when I got a copy of the game for the Mega Drive, it warmed right back up again. The Mega Drive version is similar to the Master System in some ways, but crucially different in others, and there were no fewer than 60 new levels for us to work our way through. And besides which, everyone had pretty much forgotten how to get through the Master System version, so we were basically starting fresh. But all was not well. I was a teenager now, and not shy about expressing my displeasure that I was once again having to fight for access to my own Mega Drive. I loved Lemmings as much as anyone. I was addicted to it too, but I came to resent its existence. Relationships between me and my family soured, and well, that's all in the past now. Resentments have been forgotten, and more importantly, I have Windows Lemmings and a PC I don't have to share with anyone. And anyway, I'm a doddering old man, which makes all my half-siblings ancient beyond all human reckoning, so their feeble aging brains are probably no longer up to the challenge of Lemmings. In fact, I have some serious doubts about my own mental capacity, but oh well. Lemmings on the Mega Drive, let's give it a go. If you don't know much about Lemmings, well, for one thing, shame on you, it's a widely revered classic that's appeared in many forms over the decades. But that's okay, because it also has possibly the best learning curve of any puzzle game, or any game ever come to that. The first levels are perfectly designed to introduce the player to the mechanics of the game, which is good because to complete the harder levels you need a complete understanding of those mechanics, and simple as they are, there's a bit more to them than there might appear. But first, the absolute basics. Lemmings drop out of doors like this and then proceed to walk, and without intervention, that is all they'll do. They'll walk forward until they hit a wall or a slope too steep for them to walk over, and then they'll turn around. They will not stop. It doesn't matter if there's a fatal drop in front of them or a pool of lava or a giant crushing machine that's just smashed every lemming ahead of them, they will keep walking forward. It's up to you to intervene, and you can do that via these abilities down the bottom, represented by a variety of icons. Selecting one of these abilities and then selecting a lemming will grant them a particular skill. Using these skills, you need to forge a path that will allow the lemmings to make it to the exit. You don't always need to get every lemming to the exit, in fact, that will very often be impossible. Each level has a quota of how many need to survive in order to complete it. There is also a time limit, and if you haven't met the quota by the time it expires, you fail. And oh my god, will you come to hate that timer in the harder levels as it counts down the final seconds, just as the last lemming you need to save nears the exit and the screen fades out and you pray to all the gods you don't believe in for it to just walk a little faster, damn it, please, oh please! And then you fail the level. And you cry. And you slam the controller down and turn off the console and stomp away in disgust. And then you stomp right back and turn it on again, because you were so damn close. You'll do it this time for sure. And yes, it's 4 AM, and yes, you have school tomorrow, but you can't leave it like that. It'll just take one more attempt. And one more. And one more. And that's Lemmings addiction. But the first levels are innocuous enough. You only need to save one lemming and you only have access to one skill, so that kinda cuts down your options. And hell, even the names of the first levels are explicit instructions on how to beat it. Just dig? Yep, that about covers it. This skill is the digger. If you turn a lemming into a digger, they immediately start digging downwards, if they can. There are some materials, like metal, that lemmings can't remove, but there's nothing like that to worry about in the first level. And lemmings can die if they fall too far, but again, that's not an issue here, so once you've dug your little hole, the lemmings can safely make it to the exit. Falling too far is an issue in the second level, but since the name of the level once again tells you what to do, and since it's your only actual option, you'll probably figure out that you need to turn your lemmings into floaters. Unlike most of the other skills, turning a lemming into a floater doesn't actually make them do anything, it just gives them a nice little umbrella, allowing them to survive a fall from any height. So long as what they're falling into isn't lava, of course. Or acid, or plain old water. Oh, and falling off the bottom of the screen will kill them too. There are quite a lot of things that will kill them. The third level introduces blockers. This skill turns a lemming into, well, a blocker, who stands with his arms out and emphatically shakes his head. Any other lemmings who walk into a blocker immediately turn and start walking the other way. As you can imagine, given the lemmings have no problem with casting themselves over cliffs to their death, this can be pretty damn handy. There's one thing that needs to be taken into consideration though. Once a lemming becomes a blocker, it's difficult, or often impossible, to get them walking again. So if you need to save 100% of the lemmings in a certain level, you need to consider their use very carefully. There are ways to make a blocker into a walker again, but that falls into the category of advanced techniques. Now, once you've got all your mobile lemmings home, the blockers remain. There's no way to save them here, so sadly they are doomed. We could wait for the timer to run out, since we've met the quota we'd still pass the level, but that would be a waste of 4 minutes. Fortunately, we have the nuke button. Double click this and every lemming still in the level gets a counter over their heads. When it runs out, they explode in glorious fireworks. Well, okay, glorious may be the wrong word, this isn't exactly advanced particle simulation, but there's still something damn satisfying about it, especially when a whole line of lemmings go up in smoke. Well, up in pixels anyway. Yes, it's mass murder, but believe me, play this game for a few hours and you'll be itching to blow up some of the green-haired bastards. The fourth level introduces a few new concepts that, while not exactly advanced, are vital to the game. For starters, this is the first level where you need to save every single lemming. Lose even one and you will fail. Fortunately, you would genuinely need to try hard to kill a lemming here. Secondly, you now have more than one skill at your disposal. Gasp! And furthermore, one of them is highly limited. The number above the icon tells you how many times you can use that particular skill, and this is something that becomes incredibly important. There are so many levels that would be quite easy if you just had one more digger or blocker or whatever, but the level designers were cunning, and I'm convinced sadistic. But again, that's for later. The two skills you have here are climbers and one solitary miner. As with floaters, when you make a lemming a climber, they retain that skill for the rest of the level, or until they die of course. When a lemming who is a climber reaches a vertical surface, they won't turn around, they'll climb up it. They can't handle overhangs, however. If they hit one of those, they'll fall back down. And that's another little fact that becomes vital later on. The miner is a bit like a digger, except instead of creating a vertical hole, they create a tunnel that slopes down at an angle. It's important to get a good feel for what that angle is, because many levels require a high degree of precision. Not here though. Here basically anywhere will do. So make one lemming a miner, make them all climbers, and this level is done. The next level introduces bashes, which are also like diggers except horizontal, not vertical. A fairly easy concept to grasp. This level introduces bombers. A bomber is kind of like an individual nuke button. Confer this skill on a lemming, and that's skill with some pretty serious inverted commas, and they'll get the 5-second countdown over their head, after which they explode. Crucially, they'll also take out a chunk of the scenery with them. The intention in this level is that you use blockers to make the lemmings stationary before you blow them up, but even after all these years I remember the timing to make the lemming blow up in the right place without the need for blockers. One small quirk. If a bomber is walking on the ground when their timer ends, they'll do a little panic animation before they explode, but if they're falling or already doing something else like digging, mining or blocking, there's no animation. Think that couldn't possibly matter? Then you don't yet understand just how devious this game can get. And the last skill to be introduced is builders. A lemming who is made into a builder will put down 12 bricks that form a sort of staircase. As with the miner, when you've played this game long enough, you'll get a very good feel for the exact angle they build at and the precise length they get from their 12 bricks, as in many of the later levels the phrase pixel perfect becomes highly relevant. There are other important factors though. A builder who hits their head on a ceiling or who encounters a wall in front of them while building will immediately stop and turn to walk the other way. A builder who hits a blocker, on the other hand, will also turn around but, crucially, will continue building until their 12 bricks run out. It's the small things like this that allow the level designers to come up with some truly devious puzzles. For now though, that's the basics out of the way. Oh, except for the release rate. You can change how quickly lemmings emerge from their door, but you can never make it slower than what it starts at. So if a particular level starts with the lemmings just pouring out, you have to deal with it. On the other hand, there are quite a few levels where, if you don't increase the release rate from its starting point, your time will run out even before they all emerge. Ultimately, it's just one more factor that you need to consider, and raising and lowering the release rate is a crucial part of many puzzles. Anyway, you now have all the essential skills to get through the game, but the next couple of levels continue to ease you into some of the tricks, traps and tropes that make Lemmings special. This level, for instance, introduces a new element, and I specifically remember it being the first level I had to really think about. Objects with arrows like this can only be bashed or mined through in the direction the arrows are pointing, so you can't just bash through from the left side. What's the solution? Well, just send a couple of climbers over, have one of them turn into a blocker, and then get the other one to bash through from the right direction. Don't forget to also make them floaters though, that fall is just high enough to be lethal otherwise. And then you just need to make the blocker a bomber to clear the path for the others. You don't need to save all the lemmings in this one, so it's not an issue. It's simple and pretty damn obvious, but it does require you to use a number of skills together, and it took my tiny young brain a good few minutes to figure it out. I think it's a really good example of how the learning curve ramps up just slightly, but enough to keep you interested. Anyway, there are 180 levels in the Mega Drive version of Lemmings, so I can't go through them all. Well, I could of course, my verbosity knows no bounds, but now might be a good time for a little restraint. So I'll just pick a few more examples, levels that I think demonstrate what the game does best, which is confront you with ingenious puzzles that might seem unsolvable at first, but eventually, with a bit of inspiration or logic or cleverness or sheer bloody-minded stubbornness, you will overcome. This level, I think, is a good one to look at next. It's small, it's simple, there aren't that many things you need to think about, and yet it's trickier than it might first appear. You need to save every single lemming, and we've got a very limited toolset to do it with. 2 builders, 2 bashers, and 1 digger. Oh, and you might have noticed that there are 2 doors for the lemmings to come out of. This is actually pretty common. The lemmings will alternate which door they emerge from, so you'll have to look at both of them from the start of the level. So the first thing that comes to my mind when I look at this level is that the two builders are going to be needed to bridge the gap between the door on the right and the exit. There is just no conceivable way to get the Lemmings from that right door to the exit without using the builders there. With that as the starting point, the next thing that becomes clear is that the builder Lemming is going to need to be isolated from the others. If any other Lemming comes up behind them while the stairs are being built, they're just going to walk off the end and into oblivion. So we can't really just bash through the poles separating the door on the right from the central space, because then all those Lemmings would just plunge to their doom. So the question is, how do we isolate one Lemming so he has time to build? And, relatedly, what are we going to do about the Lemmings coming from the top? The answer relies on another small but vital fact. When you make a Lemming a digger, they'll remember the direction they were going when you did it, so if you make them a basher later on, they'll continue in that direction. Okay, let's have a look at the solution. Right, pause there. Pretty clever, huh? I'm not referring to me there, that level isn't exactly rocket science. I mean the level designers. I just think the puzzles in this game are incredibly well designed, from the gentle challenge of a level like this through to some true brutality later on. In fact, bold as the claim might be, I think Lemmings remains unsurpassed in its puzzle design even close to 30 years later. Anyway, one task remains, and that's to bash through the base of the pole to let the other Lemmings out. And this is where I have one quibble with this game. In a situation like this, and you'll come across many situations like this, it almost boils down to a 50-50 chance as to whether you'll click on a Lemming going the right way. If you use your bash skill on a Lemming going the wrong way, they'll take one ineffectual swing at the air and then keep on walking. And right now I have one basher left. If I waste it, I'm screwed. I essentially have a 50% chance of ruining all my good work so far and having to start over. In this case, that's not such a disaster. It's a short level and the execution isn't too tough, although you do have to be pixel perfect with the positioning of the digger. But there are other levels that aren't so short and where the execution is incredibly tough, and starting over can be a real kick in the guts. As you might have guessed, what I'm leading up to here is an admission that I'm going to use save states. Is it cheating? Well, yeah, it is. But in this case, I'd argue that it's cheating in a way that improves the game. The main appeal of Lemmings comes from solving its puzzles. Implementing those solutions is somewhat less important, and avoiding situations like this where no matter how smart or how skillful you are, you've still got a significant chance of dooming your poor little Lemmings to death is no bad thing, I think. So, yeah, I cheat. Okay, that was a lengthy explanation of some pretty simple concepts, but I hope I've managed to convey in a small way just how well these puzzles work. Here's another level that I'll have a quick look at, and the time limit is only a minute, so it'll have to be quick. This represents my genuine thought processes and attempts as I tried to get past this level. I may have known how to do it once, decades ago, but that memory is long gone, so I'm essentially coming back to it fresh. Right, so there's basically a big block between the Lemmings and their destination. We have to save 100% of them, so the 5 bombers we have are clearly just a decoy. We can just bash through the block, of course, but all the other lemmings are just going to turn around and walk into that fatal trap back there on the left. So how about digging down a bit to create a barrier that will stop the lemmings from walking back to the trap? Okay, that stopped them from getting killed by the trap at least, but because they had so much room to walk back and forth they didn't make it to the exit in time. Maybe we can dig down once more, create another barrier and stop them walking back so far. Ah, so damn close. That bastard of a timer. Just another couple of seconds would have done it. Maybe I should try the same tactic again, surely it was close to success? But no, I have a better idea. How about just using this space here near the start as a sort of holding pen? That way, one lemming can bash on ahead and clear a path. But we're going to have to release the other lemmings at just the right time. Too early and the basher won't be finished, so they'll just hit the end of the tunnel and go back. Too late and the time will run out. Let's see if I can judge it correctly. Okay, definitely wasn't too early. How's the timer looking? Good, it's fine. Well, only 1 second left, but 1 second is enough. And that's the process I went through to solve that level. A smarter person would no doubt have come up with the holding pen idea sooner, but a smarter person would also probably have more important things to do than explain Lemmings levels at tedious length. So the puzzles are the main reason I love this game so much, but they're not the only one. There's also the music. It's insanely catchy. By which I mean it will drive you insane once you've been listening to the same piece of music for 5 hours as you struggle with a seemingly impossible level. But at least you'll be humming a jaunty tune as you make your descent to madness. Most of the tracks are upbeat remixes of classical or folk tunes, performed via the warmest synths and funkiest basses that the Mega Drive sound chip can conjure. And did I mention they're catchy? If these are earworms, they're not just regular worms, they're like those giant sandworms from Dune. I've had these melodies stuck in my brain for decades, and I don't regret a minute of it. My particular favourite is this heavy version of Tchaikovsky's Dance of the Little Swans, normally a delicate and subdued piece, but transformed in this game into an apocalyptic march of doom. I also have fond memories, of this version of Mozart's Rondo alla Turca. I might be imagining it, but it often seems to accompany a lot of the most difficult levels, and I can't hear it without feeling a certain amount of anxiety. Honestly, there's not a track in here that isn't pretty damn good. Even the somewhat annoying rendition of 10 Green Bottles is made amusing by the unexpected and upbeat paraphrasing of the funeral march, immediately followed by the wedding march. Is this a grim commentary on the institution of marriage? I'm guessing no. There are also a few levels that have special music, and also a unique graphical theme. I didn't realise it when I first played the game, but these levels are references to other Psygnosis games. Shadow of the Beast, which I did play later on, and its sequel, plus the games Menace and Awesome, which I actually don't know much about. There's also a special Sunsoft level, Sunsoft being the Japanese developers who handled the Mega Drive port and also contributed a bunch of new levels. I don't know what it's referencing, but coming across this level with its incredibly Japanese aesthetic was quite a surprise back in the day. None of these levels are a challenge, they're all extremely straightforward, which I might consider to be disappointing, but they all have excellent music taken from the original games, and although the graphical styles might be a bit jarring, they still look pretty cool. Speaking of graphical style, the overall look of the game is, well, it does the job, and does it well. The graphics are nothing spectacular, but they're pleasant enough to look at with a good variety of different styles. Most importantly though, they facilitate the gameplay without being too visually confusing. This is important because every pixel in this game can be crucial. Basically, if you can see it in the play area, it's part of the game. Even if it's a couple of pixels in the middle of empty space, that could be a crucial platform you can build to, or use to break a fall that would otherwise be too high for the lemmings to survive. A single pixel is enough to stop a climber and make them fall back down, so it's vital to be able to see clearly what you've got to work with. Then there's the animation. It's well known that the whole idea of the game derived from a tiny walking animation of a sprite measuring no more than 8x8 pixels. The lemmings themselves really are at the heart of the game, and small as they may be, they have a whole heap of character. Just watching them march through a level is hypnotic, and watching them explode in little pops of pixels can inspire glee and pity, often both at the same time. Now there's one last element of the game that I want to talk about, mostly because I just don't see it being talked about enough, and that's the two-player mode. Lemmings is a highly renowned game throughout the world, but I rarely see the multiplayer mentioned. Yes, there are people who know it and love it, but I personally think it's one of the best and most interesting multiplayer modes to come out of the early 90s. I think it should be an e-sport. I'd like to see it played in packed arenas and professional League of Legends or Street Fighter players quit those games and take up a career in a competitive Lemmings league. Okay, that's a forlorn hope, but honestly it's an underrated multiplayer game. The two-player mode is necessarily very different to the single-player mode. There are 20 special multiplayer levels and they're mostly very simple. That's because the challenge here comes not from the environment but from your opponents. In this mode, each player has lemmings of their own colour, blue or green, and also an exit of their own. The exits are usually on opposite sides of the level, while all the lemmings, both blue and green, emerge from a door in the centre. Each player can only give orders to the lemmings of their colour, and the object of the game is to get as many lemmings of either colour into your exit. As you might be able to imagine, this opens up a wealth of tactical options. Your opponents build a ladder to bridge a crucial gap. Get one of your lemmings there and you can mine right through it. Your opponents opened up a clear path to their exit. Dig a giant hole so all their lemmings get trapped. Your opponents managed to get a bunch of your lemmings to just about reach their exit. Oh well, just mine through a platform, sending every single lemming, yours and theirs, into a pool of lava. The Amiga version apparently had modem play, but of course the Mega Drive version is strictly a split-screen affair. This is a multiplayer mode that might genuinely be hazardous to your health, as there are few things more likely to make the person sitting next to you want to punch you in the face than ruining their cunning plans with a single bomber. Unfortunately, to get the most out of this mode you need two players who are intimately familiar with the way the game works. My fellow doddering old man, the same one who somehow survived the experience of playing terrible fighting games with me in the last video, kindly offered to be my opponent, but he had never played the game before. He caught on as quickly as could be expected from a man even older and more doddering than myself, but alas, I was able to trounce him convincingly. Not great for capturing interesting footage, but definitely good for my ego. Well, that's Lemmings. If I haven't made it obvious enough already, it's one of my all-time favourite games, and one that I think everyone should play. Well, maybe not people with addictive personalities, or with fragile tempers, or who have stuff they need to get done, honestly, because this game will keep you up all night, guaranteed. Okay, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe and all that stuff you've probably been doing on YouTube for years, if not decades. You certainly don't need me reminding you. My next video will be... oh wow, I think I've accidentally arranged to do a Christmas game just in time for Christmas. It's a coincidence, I swear. You can probably believe that I'm the sort of Scrooge-like bar humbug character who would only do something Christmassy by accident. Oh well. Until then, get off my lawn.